This project brought to you by another project failing in today's episode of Dev Diary, the series where I try to make my own video games. So last week I actually made a couple of games as part of a single video. One of them was a very primitive looking game about a frog eating flies. Now the original concept was meant to have the game actually change with the years, but I was never going to get that done in time for the video, so it was nixed. Well, this week's project ended up not working out, so instead, let's bring back that fly-eating game in a less primitive style. The concept is exactly the same. The player controls a frog who may look familiar. They can freely move amongst the tiles, and when on a water tile, they will in fact move twice as fast, which, as someone who knows very little about actual frogs, will simply assume this is how most frogs operate. Speaking of which, the player can whip out their frog buddy's tongue with left click. This will put the player in a temporary immobile state as the tongue whips to and from their froggy self. The flies this time around are a little more lively. They will randomly patrol from tile to tile, awaiting to become frog food. However, this time around, we've got an extra fly type in the form of these red flies. Normally, eating a fly will gain the player a point towards their consumption goal, but eating a red fly will actually just hurt the player. And the thing about the frog's tongue is that it's a little unwieldy. It'll grab any fly at any time. So in other words, the player must use their tongue wisely. Speaking of wisdom, did you know that if you enjoy the content, supporting me on Patreon can help me keep making it? Yeah, and in doing so can actually get you access to exclusive content and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. But seriously, playing smart here is key because it's not just red flies that the player has to avoid. No, there's a larger, ever-present threat in the form of this, well, I originally called it a gator, but it looks more like a snake, or maybe a derpy dinosaur. Look, I'm still learning how to make 3D models, okay? Anyway, the player will want to avoid this reptilian monster because making contact with it will hurt, like badly. And there's no way to heal, so once the player takes damage, it's there until they eat enough flies to advance to the next level. And that's basically the gameplay loop. Frog eats flies, avoids red flies and reptilian creature of doom, and tries to survive to reach their goal. Not a very deep experience, but again, this was very last minute. And also, fun fact, this is the first time I've been able to use my newly developed isometric engine. It's my latest iteration, and really all it does is clean up the math from the last version and, streamline usage. But don't get me wrong, it still needs a lot of work. Like, for example, collisions. Characters will go to the absolute edge of the tiles and it looks kind of weird. And also I still haven't figured out how to math out things like pathfinding. So yeah, even after all these years, I'm still plugging away at making a proper base to make isometric games one day. The math continues to be the most difficult aspect of the whole thing, but this being the cleanest version yet makes me very hopeful for future iterations. So anyway, what did you think of the update to the original Frog Eats Flies game? What other dangers and mechanics would you add to make it an even better experience? As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas, so be sure to share them in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and why not subscribe if you're new to the channel. With that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.